Welcome to Informer Live. I'm your host, Denise Rolark Barnes, publisher of the Washington newspaper and host also of Win TV. Make sure you check us out on Fridays, every Friday from noon to 1 here on Facebook and all of the other channels where you can find us, YouTube and what have you. So we're not going to belabor that. I want to bring on my guest host today, Mr. Stacy Brown, also host of a wonderful TV show on represented by NNPA. Stacey Brown, welcome to Win TV.
Always a pleasure, Denise. Always a
Now,
pleasure.
it would be helpful if I could get the name of the show, right?
Let it be known. Let it
Let it
be
be known.
known.
And Informer Live. Look, we had some great news this week, or at least last week, when actually you may have written the story about the
Yes.
new president of the Rainbow Push Coalition, Dr. Frederick D. Haynes III.
Yes.
You broke that story. We had it on our website, and it was all over. It's news that spread all over the country because this was big news, and so it's exciting. One, to talk to you about it, but even more exciting that we have with us none other than Dr. Frederick D. Haynes III to talk about his position now, his new, I guess, role, responsibility. I'm trying to make your shoulders go down, Dr. Hayes, because it's a lot you're taking on, walking in the footsteps of Reverend Jesse L. Jackson Jr. But anyway, welcome to Informer Live.
Thank you. I'm honored to share, and thank you so much for having me.
I know that you have been all over the place talking about this position, but Stacey, we're going to have a conversation this afternoon.
Yes.
And we really want to start with saying congratulations, first of all, but also just your immediate reaction. What is it that you're telling most people about what this new position means to you?
Well, again, thank you so much for having me. The position means more to me than words can fully express. But I will say that, number one, I'm grateful that I am standing on the shoulders, the strong shoulders of Reverend Jesse Jackson. Reverend Jesse Jackson has achieved iconic status as it relates to being a game-changing history maker. Jesse Jackson, without question, has impacted this nation. He's impacted this world. His historic runs for the presidency, his campaigns in 84 and 88 literally transformed the platform of the Democratic Party. On top of that, Jesse Jackson dared to go where others would not go to retrieve those who were captives of foreign governments, not to mention the fact that Rainbow Push has its deep roots in Operation Breadbasket, led by Reverend Jackson, which began the push for economic justice, so that Reverend Jackson understood it's one thing to have civil rights, another thing to have silver rights. And so when I look at what Reverend Jackson has done, the places his shoes have gone, those shoes are much too big for me or anyone to try to fill. And so I'm going to do my best to stand on his shoulders. I am honored, I am humbled, and I am excited about the possibilities as we seek to serve this present age.
Well, let me jump into, if you don't mind, Denise. Dr. Haynes, we know that as Denise is talking about that weight on your shoulders now, we know that's a tall task, replacing or trying to fill the shoes of Jesse Jackson. What about the emotional side? We know that the Reverend Jackson has had battles, the Parkinson's disease, and some other battles. And so talk a little bit about the emotional side of replacing Reverend Jackson.
Wow, that's almost overwhelming. And yet there is a part of me that is grateful. It's overwhelming because he's Jesse Jackson. It's overwhelming because it is heartbreaking to see someone whose words stirred the world now struggling in his own efforts to communicate, to be sure he can still get his point across, but we all know that the silver tongue oratory that characterized his meteoric rise and his prophetic witness, it's not what it was. And so my heart breaks because we miss that. The beautiful thing is his mind is as sharp as ever. And because his mind is still sharp, I'm the beneficiary of the wisdom that he still possesses, the prophetic insight, the social justice consciousness, and IQ that has always characterized Jesse Jackson. So emotionally, Stacy, that is so on point. I've had my moments where I have literally asked God, what's up? How is it that someone whose silver-tongued oratory moved the world, as it were, and now we don't have the benefit of that gift? And so that is something that is that I wrestle with emotionally. But at the same time, I'm grateful because I know that he has poured into so many, including myself. And we have a responsibility to speak up for this one who has spoken up for us, even as his voice is not as strong as it has been. But I sure thank God that his mind is as sharp as ever.
You
That's-
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Denise.
Yeah, I just want to jump in quickly because I want our listeners to know Dr. Haynes is an icon himself. I mean, we may not have connected you with Rainbow Push or any of the in leadership positions of any of the civil rights organizations, but you've always been there. And as a minister who has traveled around the country, I don't think there's a church probably they haven't stepped into and delivered a word and left people, really sort of motivated to move for change. And also a speaker at the Congressional Black Caucus breakfast. You have been everywhere. But I'm sure while you were thinking about this role, I'm wondering how you felt about, is this the role for me? And what am I going to bring to this? Because you speak so highly of Reverend Jackson. What is it that you bring to this position that you think will help to keep the organization as active and thriving as it has been?
Right. Mama didn't raise no fools. So I have to admit that I never expected this. When he first approached me, I guess about 4 years ago, I was stunned. To use the language of my mother, I almost swallowed my false teeth, even though I have real teeth. But it's just that mind blowing to me that this icon, who I've always looked up to, I will never forget 84 and 88, watching the Democratic National Convention, and literally Reverend Jesse Jackson transformed the convention center and this country into his pulpit, where he prophetically spoke up for the least of these and cast a vision that is truer to what America should be than perhaps we've ever witnessed, other than when Dr. King declared, "I have a dream." So please know that, again, I never saw this coming. And it just speaks to the fact that, God has plans. Even when we think we're going in one direction, God is saying, okay, I'm getting you ready for something else. And with that faith, I am believing that Reverend Jackson, who personally approached me and personally told the board of Rainbow Push that he wanted me to be his successor, that he saw something in me and what I've been trying to do that caused him to make such a decision. Again, I'm still blown away by it. I'm overwhelmed and yet grateful to God for this awesome privilege, because I do recognize that what I've been exposed to when it comes to Reverend Jackson, I now have a responsibility to stand up, again, not in his shoes, but on his shoulders as we move forward as a people. I believe Reverend Jackson did that brilliantly, being exposed to Martin Luther King Jr. And April 5th, 1968, after Dr. King had been assassinated on April 4th, I'm sure that there were those who were wondering, who would step up to fill the gargantuan shoes of the drum major for justice, Martin Luther King Jr. And yet we've discovered that God always has a way of preparing us for what God has prepared for us. And I am honored to do my part. And hopefully, I will be used in a way that opens the door to a new era of justice, freedom, and empowering possibilities, especially for our people.
Yeah, part of the motto, if you will, of Rainbow Push is to protect, defend, and gain civil rights by leveling the economic and educational playing fields and to promote peace and justice around the world. We live in a time, as you well know, Dr. Haynes, and obviously Reverend Jackson understands, it's even different than it was during the fight for civil rights in the 50s and 60s. There are many challenges. What are some of your plans that you can share with us to navigate these challenges to continue to secure the mission of the Rainbow Push Coalition?
Yeah, thank you very much for that. You've said it so well. Sadly, it has been said that we are less free or have fewer rights in 2023 than we did in 1963. Because in 64, you have the Civil Rights Bill that is passed, and everything has been done to try to weaken that civil rights bill. We know how the Supreme Court has literally gutted the Voting Rights Act. And I'm in a state, Texas, where they are doing everything they can to ensure that there are high barriers to the voting ballot. And so we find ourselves in a crazy time, not to mention the fact that our planet is experiencing a slow burn. One could easily say our planet is on fire. And I especially bring that up because of the fact that environmental injustice, environmental racism has caused our communities to be on the front lines when it comes to this war against climate change, this war against global warming, because we are the first ones who are victimized by leaded water, and we can't afford unleaded gas. At the same time, we find ourselves in community where we are inhaling toxins and bad air that was produced on another side of town, and yet it infects our lungs. I'm in Dallas, Texas, and here in Dallas, the author of the amazing book entitled A Terrible Thing to Waste, How Environmental Racism Affects the American brain, she talks about the fact that Dallas leads the nation in the number of days missed by students because of asthma coming from the air that our kids inhale. And I promise you, they're not on the north side of town, they're on the south side of town where our people live. And so that right there provides for me an agenda going forward. Number one, we're going to continue to do what Rainbow Push has been about, and that is push for economic justice. Jesse Jackson said it so well back in the day, rapping before hip hop. He said, we don't want charity, we want parity. And so we're going to push for parity, economic parity and justice in all of its manifestations. I'll give you one example. In many cities, even when we are in the majority, when it comes to business procurement opportunities, sadly, Black businesses are making less than 5% of the total budget of monies given to businesses for development by tax-paying dollars. We don't want charity, we want parity. We're not going to be content with receiving sponsorship at banquets where you give us money for a table and yet you are not hiring us, yet you are not providing opportunities of upward mobility for the skills that we so often bring to these companies. And so we're going to continue the push for economic justice. We're going to continue to do what we can to attack poverty, going back to the roots of Operation Breadbasket, but also As you pointed out, educational justice. We see right now in this country, sadly, that there is a war on the truth. Jacob Carruthers would call it historicide, where they're trying to kill our memory and basically lie about the past. And so, given this, it's going to be important that we do all we can to ensure that we get in our schools, work in our school districts to make sure the truth is told.
Dr. Haynes, really quickly, because I know we are running out of time, but you were here in Washington, D.C. last week with the U.S. Black Chambers, and part of your speech was, I think the focus was on collaboration.
Right.
I know it's been a while since we saw the National Black Leadership Roundtable actually functioning, and how our civil rights organizations really need to come together. I think you talked a lot about that, and business and faith and what have you. How do you plan to spark that again, those groups of working together and collaborating on all of these issues, as opposed to what we've seen, or it seems like groups are working in silos?
Yeah, and Denise, thank you so much for that question. That's going to be a priority for me because it is so essential. In case we don't know, as my girl Tamika Mallory says, we're in a state of emergency. The Supreme Court has declared war on justice and freedom. And so we have a responsibility now to do what Mary McLeod Bethune said. She said, if I tap you with one finger, I may get your attention. If I bring all my fingers together and form a fist, that's power right there. And so I'm going to try my best to be a cohesive personality, inviting all of us to come together because all of us have a part to play, and we can accomplish a whole lot more together than we have apart. And there's enough room for all of us to do our part, and that includes our young activists and the amazing leadership they provide, as well as our legacy organizations. The bottom line is war has been declared on us, and we need all hands on deck.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Stacey, you got anything you want to wrap up with?
Well, one quick thing, the Wall Street Project has always been a big thing for Rainbow Push. Give us a quick update on that.
Oh my God. We in our board meeting last week, we talked about doing everything in our power to re-energize the Wall Street Project, because Reverend Jackson again said it so well. In the fourth movement of our Freedom Symphony is access to capital. And until we have access to capital, again, we'll have civil rights without civil rights. And it's almost as if Martin Luther King Jr. was right when he said it's one thing to be able to sit at the lunch counter. It's another thing to be able to buy a hamburger at that lunch counter. And I want to say in 2023, it's another thing to own that lunch counter and be able to serve the community. So yeah, Wall Street Project, we're coming back all the way live.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Haynes. I just want to let folks know Washington Informer just got here hot off the presses, Stacey. So it's actually getting distributed throughout the community right now. People can pick up a copy. The story about your new leadership is also in this week's paper. So I'm hoping folks will see that. And I am always, I have to say, on a personal note, been indebted to the Reverend Jackson, because he delivered the eulogy at my dad's funeral.
Wow.
So, and actually was, our statehood representative here in the District of Columbia for a short period of time. So you got some big shoes to fill, but then your shoes are big already. So I'm sure you're used to walking in big shoes, and will actually bring a lot to the table. So thank you so much for being with us, and we look forward to talking to you and following you. And like I said, Stacey's with NMPA, so I know that he will be covering you, and we will too. So reach out anytime.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.